Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Israel's attack on Iran sent a strong message to Tehran and the Middle East. The Jewish nation is able to strike military targets at will and is becoming the dominant power in the Middle East.
Saturday's attack dealt a major blow to Iran's ballistic missile production, possibly setting it back for years, and with no Israeli losses. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the attack on Iran was precise, powerful, and achieved all its goals.
In the early hours of Saturday, we kept our promise. The Air Force attacked throughout Iran. We severely damaged Iran's defense capacity and the ability to produce missiles aimed at us. All this comes after the last few months where we acted systematically according to a systematic plan to cut the arms of the octopus of Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Yesterday, we hit the head of the octopus, the Iranian regime.
Called Days of Repentance, the operation included 3 waves of attacks, more than 100 warplanes, and struck more than 1,000 miles from Israel. Yet IDF Chief of Staff Halevi said Israel used just a portion of its capabilities. Satellite photos show the damage to key Iranian military installations, which may have set back Iran's production of ballistic missiles for years. Israel also destroyed air defenses in Iraq, Syria, and Iran, and knocked out state-of-the-art S-300 and 400 air defenses. Former U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman says it sends a powerful signal to Iran.
But most importantly, I think sending the message to Iran, anytime we want, we got you. Once we knock out your air systems, we have free reign over your country. And we didn't do it this time, but keep it up. Keep up this nuclear program, and you'll see us back here in the near future. I thought that was a great message. I mean, I think they accomplished some short-term objectives, but I think the long-term messaging, was equally important.
Saudi Arabia condemned the attack, but did not mention Israel.
The Arab world is condemning publicly, the GCC, the Arab League, condemning the attack publicly. But the secret in the Middle East is don't listen to what people say, watch what they do.
Dan Diker of the Jewish Center for Public Affairs says Israel is emerging as the strong horse in the Middle East.
The Arab world knows that what Israel just did to the Iranian regime and what it did to the Hamas and the Hezbollah by killing off their leadership and decimating their command structure is to actually kill the arch enemy of those very Arab countries that were condemning Israel.
Iran issued a combination of bluster and restraint following the attack. The commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps threatens the consequences of the attack in Iran will be unimaginable for the state of Israel. Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei warned Israel.
They are yet to appreciate Iran's power, capability, creativity, and willpower. We must make them understand those.
On Sunday, Israel remembered all those soldiers, police, and security personnel who fell on October 7th and throughout the war. Israel's President Isaac Herzog honored them.
The most moving faces of the Israeli mosaic, Jews and Druze, Christians and Muslims, from various perspectives and ways of life, who sought to protect the state of Israel and its citizens with devotion, determination, and a sense of unmatched mission.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, my prayer is that the conflict would end, that this would be the last strike, if you will. It would prove that Israel has the capability of striking whenever and wherever it wants in the Middle East, and cause the other side to take a real long look at what they're trying to do and stand down. In that, would there be a release of the hostages? Would there be peace finally in Gaza? Would southern Lebanon turn into a demilitarized zone with no more weapons, no more Hezbollah launching rockets into Israel? That's my hope. That's my prayer. While the piece was running, Terry asked me, do you think it's over? And my response was, no, I don't, because I've read in this book that it's not. There will come a day where all the nations will gather against Jerusalem, and we have not seen that. This is a birth pang, and it's been a horrible experience for Israel. A horrible experience for the entire world. And are we getting set up for even more? The answer is quite clearly yes. But right now, it's a birth pang, and as you know, birth pangs end, and then there's a pause, and then there's another one. In other news, just 8 days to go, and the presidential campaign remains a tight race. Ephraim Graham has that story and more from the CBN Newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, the latest Real Clear Politics numbers have former President Donald Trump with a 0.1% lead over Vice President Kamala Harris nationally. A recent CBS News poll has Harris up by 1% over Trump. The economy and inflation are the major issues on those voters' minds. At a rally in New York's Madison Square Garden last night, former President Donald Trump pushed to shift the Empire State in the GOP's direction. Vice President Kamala Harris was in Philadelphia, stumping the swing state of Pennsylvania. Today, Trump will speak to his faith advisory board in Georgia. The vice president will be campaigning in Michigan. Virginia's Attorney General is appealing the state's policy of removing non-citizens from its voter rolls to the U.S. Supreme Court. Governor Glenn Youngkin's executive order removes those who couldn't prove citizenship within 14 days. Sunday, a federal appeals court struck down Virginia's challenge to a lower court's ruling stopping the practice. The Biden administration filed the suit, arguing federal law prohibits states from removing names from voter rolls 90 days before a presidential election. Turning overseas now to a troubling development in Russia's war on Ukraine. At least 3,000 North Korean troops are joining forces with Russia. A major question centers on what Vladimir Putin might offer Kim Jong-un in return for his assistance and what it might mean for global stability. Our Gary Lane is on this story.
The presence of North Korea troops in Ukraine came as no surprise to national security analyst Brandon Weichert. Do we know for certain that the North Korean troops are there, and is this an escalation?
Absolutely, they're there. And in fact, they're not the only nation that has troops in the war on both sides.
Weichert is author of The Disaster of Our Own Making, How the West Lost Ukraine.
There are multiple foreign actors fighting each other. It's a proxy war. And so this is just the latest escalation.
And a move the U.S. government sees as a desperate act by Russian President Vladimir Putin.
This is an indication that he may be even in more trouble than most people realize.
That he has to farm out the fighting to a foreign country, I think, speaks volumes about how much his military is suffering and how uncertain he believes, how untenable he believes his situation is.
Putin is still going all out in his effort to defeat Ukraine. The Russian Duma has approved record defense spending of $145 billion for next year, equaling a third of the country's total budget. Additionally, Russian lawmakers have ratified the Strategic Partnership Treaty signed by Putin and Kim Jong-un last June. It commits both countries to provide immediate military assistance to each other. So what might North Korea receive for helping Putin in Ukraine?
Well, they likely gave him more weapons technology. The North Koreans have wanted to get more and more access to greater levels of sophisticated weapons systems. So I'm sure on some level they are engaging in some kind of trade, maybe over hypersonic weapon development.
Armed with nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles, North Korea poses a threat to both American allies in East Asia and the United States itself. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol says North Korea's military presence in Ukraine could lead his country to provide lethal support in the fight against Russia. Former British Prime Minister David Cameron has suggested that Indian Prime Minister Modi, a Putin ally, could be a potential negotiator in peace talks. Weichert warns that an effort should be pursued by the West before it's too late.
I think anything that ends the war as quickly and peacefully as possible is what we need. The Ukrainian war has become an insuperable wound in the international body, and it's going to lead, if we're not careful, to World War III.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
An end to the war is desperately needed. Gordon?
Absolutely, it's desperately needed, and it's desperately needed for all the civilians on the Ukrainian side. The horror they have put up with now for years, with Russia targeting hospitals, targeting schools, targeting power plants, kidnapping people and taking them into Russia, relocating children. All of this has been happening, and the international community has been absolutely silent. They've used rape as a weapon of war, and there seems to be no consequence for it. The good news is this is a sign that they're losing the war. Let's hope that they lose it quickly, and let's hope it doesn't turn into World War III. So please pray for the peace of Ukraine.